Welcome to chapter 3 of the story. I'd like to begin with a little story. This comes from a newsletter that I get. A teenage boy had just passed his driver's test and asked his father if he could use the family car. The father said, "Let's see about this. If you'll read your scriptures and you'll get your hair cut, I think we could probably arrange it." The boy said, "Fine." After 6 weeks, the boy had been reading a lot of scripture. The father came to him and said, "Son, I've seen that you've been reading your scriptures, but I'm concerned because you haven't cut your hair." And the boy said, "You're right, Father, but you see, as I read the scriptures, the patriarchs had long hair, Moses had long hair, John the Baptist had long hair, Jesus had long hair." The father didn't miss a beat. He looked at him and said, "Yes, son, you're correct. But did you notice that they walked everywhere?" There was a lot of walking in the Near East in biblical times. You can see here this map of the Near East and the powers that were. You can see over in near Ur that you have the old Babylonian empires. Above that you have Nineveh. You go all the way over to the left, you see Egypt and Egyptian powers and their influence there. Canaan was an influenced area at that particular time when Abraham came down, and Isaac and Joseph and Jacob. Now this story is about Joseph. Joseph's brothers had taken the sheep and they'd gone to Shechem, about in the middle of Canaan. And because there wasn't enough pasture land, they had gone northwest of that to Dothan. Now in Dothan, there was good pasture land, but it also ran right alongside the trade routes. This little picture will show you the different trade routes that there were in the region. They went all over the place. As they were there, the brothers saw Joseph coming to them and they decided to kill him. Just as they were about to kill him, though, they saw a caravan of traders. They called them Ishmaelites. Now the Ishmaelites we would think would simply mean ancestors of Ishmael, and they very well may have been. But the word in those days actually meant traders, people who went by caravans and did a lot of trading. So the Ishmaelites simply meant traders. And as the traders, the caravan got closer, the brothers recognized that these traders were from Midian. And Midian is, if you take a look at this next picture right here, if you look down at the bottom, you'll see the Red Sea and you'll see two gulfs. The Suez Gulf is on the west, and the Gulf on the east side of the Sinai Peninsula is the Gulf of Aqaba. Just on the east side of the Gulf of Aqaba is Midian. These traders were from Midian. Most likely they'd gone north through Petra. They may have actually gone all the way up to Damascus and then come down through the northern part of Canaan. And when they got to Dothan, about in the middle of Canaan, they found out that the brothers of Joseph wanted to sell him as a slave. They continued on in their journey and they got to Egypt, where they sold him. Now in Egypt, oh, I don't know if I mentioned, did you see these pictures of camel caravans? They're actually quite interesting. Here's one. Yeah, the camels are not from this day, obviously. These are current ones. But camels don't change much. Here's a second one right here. And a third picture of caravans. Current caravans, much like they were 3,800 years ago. Now, Joseph gets taken by the Midianite traders to Egypt. Now Egypt has gone through quite a bit of dramatic change in the last couple hundred years when Joseph arrives there. A group called the Hyksos dynasty has just begun. This dynasty were not Egyptians. They were Semitic tribesmen, many of them from Canaan and other areas east of Egypt. They come in and they take over the northern part of Egypt. They dominate that region and they become pharaohs even as foreigners in that place. So when Joseph comes in And when he goes through all the things that you read about and find out about in the story, he becomes, after a while, the second most powerful person in Egypt, the northern kingdom. He's working for a foreign pharaoh. Now, we'd like to know where the capital of the Hyksos dynasty was, and we'd like to know which Pharisee he worked for. The problem is, a few hundred years after Joseph, the Hyksos dynasty is destroyed, and Egyptians take it over again, and they do everything they can to destroy all the information about that particular dynasty because they were foreigners. So there are no records left of who the pharaohs were or anything that might indicate Joseph. But the scriptures tell us that the people of Israel settle right there in Goshen, which is in the Nile Delta region. It's a rich, fertile place. And as they do so, they grow strong and multiply. Now there's one last interesting thing that happens. Near the end of his life, Jacob, who has now been brought from Canaan over to Egypt, asks his son Joseph to swear that he will take his bones and lay them in his homeland. So Joseph puts his hand underneath his thigh and promises that he will do that. I thought that was kind of strange. Put your hand under someone's thigh. You know, when we make a promise, maybe we put our hand on the Bible or we put our hand over our heart. But in that culture, posterity was found in the loins. And to put your hand underneath someone's thigh was to say, upon your posterity, I promise. Upon all my ancestors, I promise. Or it might have meant, or it also might have also meant that you were submitting to the authority of the person asking you to make the promise. Whatever it was, Joseph puts his hand underneath Jacob's thigh and he promises to take his bones back to Canaan. And so he does when Jacob dies. Hopefully some of these things will be encouraging to you and help you as you take a look at the wanderings and the walkings and the amazing story of God working in Joseph's life. Thank you for your time.